People who've been on home renovation or remake shows, how's the house holding up? Plumbing and remodeling company I work for did plumbing for an HGTV show about 10 years ago. We did the hookups for the new laundry room. The homeowners picked some fancy Moroccan tile for the floors at some upscale NYC boutique, and the host of the show decided it would look better without grout, which went about as well as you'd expect. Filming wrapped, and we were called back out a few weeks later to replace the fancy tile that immediately chipped and became dangerous with some boring tile. Had to sign NDAs, etc. My sister's master bedroom got a makeover on a Surprise Your Spouse show. The designer was going for an Arabian Nights romantic vibe, but it ended up pretty weird looking with all the closets hidden behind yards of draped fabric. They took it all down and painted the room a neutral color within months. They also took the ceiling fan out and replaced it with a giant tree branch wired up with twinkling lights. Not too long afterwards, half the lights went out and it was too hot in the room without the fan, so that got put back as well. On the bright side, it didn't cost them anything and was a fun experience, and they got a couple of new furniture pieces out of it, but in the end they didn't keep any of it the same. I work for one of the construction companies that was contracted to build the new house on Extreme Makeover, Home Edition. This was like 10 plus years ago when the show was at the height of its popularity. Anyways, it was a huge nice house built for a widowed mother with several kids. Father had recently died, hence why she was on the show. Even though the house was given to her, she couldn't afford it after a year or so, property tax, electricity, water, upkeep, etc., and put it on the market. Simply owning a home of that size is very expensive and she couldn't afford it. Edit. The obvious follow-up question here, I get it all the time, is what are the legalities of selling that house, especially that quickly? Does she get to keep the dollar from the sale? My answer is, I have no idea. Another popular question. Did your company have to donate anything to be on the show? Yes, but I have no idea what was donated. I have heard rumors that labor was donated and the show paid for the materials, but I have no real confirmation of this. Kind of similar, I stayed in a room that was made over on Hotel Hell. It was poorly done. The paint lines were terrible and some of it was on the ceiling. The decorations they used seemed like just really cheap stuff from TJ Maxx, not really hotel quality stuff. They didn't touch the out-of-date bathroom, but they didn't put that part on the show. The hotel also didn't keep the fancy linens in that room because I'm sure that was a pain to wash and keep track of one special set of linens. Basically it looked great on camera, but in person it did not look professionally done. My company took part in a very well-known British renovation show. We donated £6,000 worth of equipment. They promised good advertising in return for free equipment and labor. We found out after filming that the producers had asked our two largest rival companies to do the work and they said no. We couldn't understand why they wouldn't want to get involved in such a good cause. The family's story about why they deserved the work was apparently exaggerated and no one had bothered to research this properly. The show never aired. I volunteered on a site that was renovated by the show, School Pride, which lasted one season. This show went into rundown public schools and renovated some of their spaces. Noble work, but the condition of the schools was shameful, should never have gotten that way in the first place. For the project I helped with, they brought in a bunch of IKEA furniture for a student lounge. It looked cool and I am sure it helped their budget go farther, but I wasn't sure if the stuff they chose would hold up real well to a bunch of high school students using it. I have not been back to know how the school has fared since the renovation. I will be thrilled if someone shows up here from there, but any of the students that would have been there when it was new would have graduated by now. Please, you guys complaining about bad fixes. I live in Brazil. When they did this to a house here in my city, not 2 days later the house was entirely robbed. Ha ha ha, that's what you get broadcasting on national TV, all the expensive electronics you've put in a house from a dangerous peripheric neighborhood. The show was whatever Luciano Huck's show called it. A family member of mine was on a DIY show called Turf Wars. They basically come in and remodel in a neighbor's backyard and then have a vote to see who wins the remodel. The show itself was pretty clear-cut. They would come in and give a bunch of orders, take some candid shots of work being done and then hang around letting the owner and contracting crew do the work. The hosts were pretty friendly but just kind of gave orders. The voting though was kind of a joke. They had people from the neighborhood come and check out the backyards at different times, and one of the yards was inspected in perfect conditions to let the decor shine, with the other was just quickly given a walkthrough. Both of the yards honestly looked great, but the winning house neighbor, not family member, had been in the neighborhood for a few years while my family had recently moved in, so weren't well known. The problem was the neighbor had a really large centerpiece to their backyard remodel that was a little impractical for the smallish backyard they had, and there was hardly any covered sitting areas, so if the weather wasn't great, and it's not that great haha, it wasn't a comfortable area to sit around and either get baked by the sun or rained on. Less than a year later the centerpiece was removed and the pond cemented over as it was too much upkeep, and their backyard fell back to just a cement block, while my family still had the whole backyard set up there as it was much more practical. They kept it until they moved out about 3 to 4 years later, not sure if still around, but would be surprised if it was removed at all. It always bugs me in those shows where the go-to manufactured drama is, well, we opened up the wall and there's faulty wiring, water damage, termite damage, asbestos, and we didn't budget for that, so now you don't get a new master bathroom. And the homeowner responds in some, I can't believe they're trying to sabotage our home, fashion. Like no one who renovates homes for a living gets to their second renovation, let alone enough to get your own show, without learning to budget for unexpected structural or MEP issues. Ooh, this is a great question. I used to watch Trading Spaces back in the day and recall people actually crying when they walked in and saw how bad it was. There was one designer who literally glued straw to the walls. I'd so love to hear from some of those folks. Extreme Makeover came to my town in like 2013-14, and did a demolition and new build of a house for my family friends. Luckily, they had the means to keep the house, property taxes went way up. It's still a really nice house, and a few people I know have even gotten married there. The house held up super well. My family was on a home renovation show when I was a kid, in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think it was Changing Rooms or possibly another show by the same cast and producers. It was one of those shows where they do 3 rooms in the house, and mine was one of the rooms they decorated. It looked so pretty. They decorated it to look like a fairy woodland with huge tree murals on the walls and a night sky of stars hanging from the ceiling. But it held up really badly. All the murals on the wall peeled off and it looked bad pretty quickly. I had fun shooting the show though, and it was a cool story to tell my friends at school. My parents, and me, as a baby, were on a home renovation show called Makeover Wish. You would send in a heartfelt story and they would choose you and come renovate your house for you and leave it a complete surprise for you. About 6 or 7 years before I was born, I'm 15 now, one of my mother's kidneys were failing. She was in the hospital, constantly got extremely sick, and lost vision in both her eyes. My dad, being the hero he is, decided to donate one of his kidneys. Although it's not too rare for people to donate kidneys nowadays, back then this was a huge deal, and there's been several newspaper articles and news broadcasts about their story. My parents ended up winning the Makeover Wish renovation for our house. The episode is actually on YouTube. Search, Makeover Wish. The donor, I have a cameo in it. Apart from the master bedroom, everything is pretty much the same, and we've lived here ever since, and I hope to for years to come. My friend was on Love It or List It. She said that they did great quality work at a fraction of what it would have normally cost. The homeowners in this show have to pay for the renovations. She did say that her family were told to be all dramatic and have little arguments about the renovations to add spice to the show. Restaurant Impossible had a local restaurant per bar on there several years back. Originally, it was all dark wood with stained glass windows in the bar and big comfy chairs. They came in and painted everything white. The chairs are now cheap with no cushion. They took all the charm out of the place to make it look like all the cookie-cutter new places. My countertop company was hired to fix cabinets and countertops for a house after a Property Brothers episode. Like I've seen others comment, the show filmed around all the problem areas, so on the episode looked great. The homeowners were livid after the show just picked up and left, and we were stuck dealing with them. Not a fun few weeks. I was on Listed Sisters on HGTV about 3 years ago on season 2. It's been great. The quality of work held up and it is still pretty stylish. I moved so I Airbnb the house now and the HGTV aspect seems to sell it well. Nothing bad to say at all. HGTV chipped in for some repairs as well since my ceiling fell in during the reno. I was building a very energy efficient house and Renovation Nation did part of an episode about it. They made us out to be heroes for building green in what was then a terrible neighborhood, while the camera panned over to my neighbor's house across the street. He hated me for about 10 years after that. Honestly, there is not much to look at when you build that way, so I think the show was probably pretty boring. We did add solar panels recently and now the house produces as much energy as it uses. They need another show that visits all these places. I would watch. Not a Reno show, but my brother and his roommate were on House Hunters about 4 years ago and loved it. They were the two guys in Waco that sounded like straight country bumpkins, although my brother has since lost that accent. His friend was actually the one buying the house and my brother was just renting from him, but the producers insisted he be a major part of the show and pretend to have big opinions on the house he wasn't even buying to make it interesting. After a lot of back and forth, he finally honed in wanting a craftsman-style home, again, still not even the purchaser, and I think said it 500 times. Still don't think he even knows what that means. They both got paid a couple $100, but had to take a week or so off of work. Ended up feeling so uncomfortable that they just drank all day and had fun with it. They also recently had their episode on the show where the comedians roast them, which was pretty funny to watch. Oh, and his roommate already owned the house prior to filming, so it was all bullshit. I'm a professional shadow boxer and my wife is an actual mannequin. Our budget is $3 million. I know a family who were on changing rooms. They said it was really crap and cheaply done. Also, a hotel I stayed in was on Britain's worst hotels. It was on there because it was dirty and because the staff there kept offering the guests drugs instead of pillows. I had to watch it with my parents and had to fake a shocked, "Oh, I had no idea that sort of thing happened," face the whole time. It's not a house, but a local place was on bar rescue a few years back. Overhauled the entire interior. I haven't seen the episode of the actual show, but the bar has softball fields at it. I went up and played softball during one their test runs. They renamed the place Boulder Lodge. About 9 months later they went back to the old name but kept most of the interior designs and food menu. It's still running and largely seems better than it was before the rescue. I work for a high-end custom home builder. I've signed NDAs so I can't say who we've built for, but let's just say we've built for the owners of Smunder Sharmer and the owner of Schmamazon. And even with the type of work we do where everything is top-notch materials and craftsmanship, we still have to go back year after year to fix things. Houses settle, paint cracks, homeowners drop things on tile floors, etc. And these are houses that take us 3 years at least to build from the ground up or renovate. I can't stand those shows who remodel in like 2 weeks. Lol, there's just no way to do so without issues down the line. A local restaurant was on one of those restaurant makeover shows. The show made them take their most popular item off the menu. They took a pretty good restaurant and made it kinda bad. Before the show they were decently busy. You could get a reservation same day during the week, but weekends was pretty busy. After the hype of the show died down you could walk in and get seated even on weekends. My sister had her bathroom remodeled for a show. They took 2 back-to-back ancient 1970s styled bathrooms and made one giant bathroom with a walk-in, no-door shower and a bathtub that fills from a faucet in the ceiling and marble sinks. They paid for all the materials while the show paid for the design and labor. Still the show said, "You have to buy these 2 sinks. They are $1,500 each. Yes, buy them." She did further renovations later, but rents that house out now because they bought a new place. I think the bathroom certainly brought a wow factor from the renters. If it were me, having 2 back-to-back bathrooms with updated fixtures and paint would be worth a lot more than one giant bathroom with separate walk-in shower, huge 50-gallon tub and a single toilet, and 2 marble sinks, because practically speaking only one person can use that at a time and it feels like you're pooping in a living room or something, it's so big. And #X200B. In any case, I think the renovation certainly added appeal and value to the house for sure. I was gonna be on House Hunters a few years back, but my realtor didn't respond when we called him about it. Edit. WTH, these replies are educational. Was on a show called The Builders on the BBC in the mid-90s. They were building an extension on the back of our house but left for 2 weeks unexpectedly halfway through construction. We couldn't get in touch with the builders and the production crew were very cagey when we asked whether they knew where they were. Found out a few months later when the show aired that they had all buggered off to Tenerife together for a holiday without telling us. We hadn't finished paying them by that point because they still had a few tiny bits and pieces to finish, the sort of things we could do ourselves if needs be but which they'd agreed to complete before we paid them the final payment. Long story short, we complained and told them not to come back and ended up getting a 1/3 road off the price we'd expected to pay for the extension. Friends were on a show a few years ago. It was super intense 3 weeks of filming and the redesign looked great on camera. In reality it was literally things stuck together with staples and tape. After the show my friend took 2 weeks off work to rebuild everything properly. My grandpa has an awesome wood workbench made for the Woodwright's Shop, PBS show. I think it'll probably be around for my cousin's grandkids with how solid it is. Remember, Extreme Makeover, a show where they build or hugely remake a home for a needy person owner. They did one here in my town, won't say for privacy, and my brother, a builder, was approached to help build a home in the dead of winter. Bros couldn't help but our friends, the neighbors to the home, volunteered and the home was completed in 1 week. In heavy rain and cold, they built it, and now the home has any number of problems too. The owner went back on Extreme Makeover to fix everything, and was told, "You got this for free, fix it yourself." This reminds me of an episode of I think it was DIYSOS, where they redone this woman's bedroom and kept referring to it as a boudoir. They done it up like, you ever see the film Moulin Rouge? Like that kind of setup. The woman absolutely fucking hated it. Probably one of the few times I've ever seen someone not just smile and nod at the monstrosity they did. I also heard Pimp My Ride was a fucking scam basically. All the LCD TVs and the really expensive shit they put in those cars took them right back out. What I learned from these threads: these things are a complete scam. Thanks for watching. See you later.